James and Emily had been married for 7 years, their life filled with the kind of comfort and routine that comes from knowing someone inside and out. Their small circle of friends often included Mark, James' best friend since college. Mark had always been a fixture in their lives, a brother to James and a trusted confidant to Emily. James never thought twice about the time Mark spent with them. If anything, he appreciated how Mark could lighten the mood, especially during rough patches. Emily, too, seemed to enjoy Mark's company, often laughing at his jokes in a way James hadn't seen her do in years. One evening, James was called into work unexpectedly. Emily and Mark had been planning to watch a movie together at their house, and James saw no harm in leaving them to it. As he headed out the door, he noticed a flicker of something between them, a glance too quick to read. He brushed it off as paranoia. Over the weeks that followed, Emily's behavior began to shift. She seemed more distracted, her phone always within reach, and her laughter more frequent when Mark was around. James chalked it up to her needing a distraction from the stresses of life. After all, Mark had always been like family. One Friday night, James came home earlier than expected. The house was eerily quiet, and he found it odd that Emily wasn't in the kitchen or living room. A strange unease settled over him as he climbed the stairs. He paused outside their bedroom door, which was slightly ajar, and heard muffled voices. The unmistakable sound of Emily's laughter, softer and more intimate than usual, made his stomach churn. Pushing the door open, James found Emily and Mark together, their expressions frozen in shock. The air in the room seemed to thicken as realization dawned on him. Emily tried to explain, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush, but there was no undoing what he had seen. Mark, uncharacteristically silent, couldn't even meet James' eyes. James felt his world collapse around him. Betrayal cut deeper than anger ever could. This was not just a violation of his marriage, but a betrayal by the man he had considered his brother. Without a word, James turned and walked out, leaving them to grapple with the fallout of their actions. The days that followed were a blur. Emily begged for forgiveness, promising it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. Mark disappeared from their lives entirely, unable to face the damage he had caused. But for James, the wound was too deep. The trust that had once been the foundation of their relationships was irreparably shattered. In the end, James chose to walk away. The betrayal taught him a harsh lesson about trust, love, and the fragility of relationships. He rebuilt his life, piece by piece. Vowing never to ignore the quiet warnings his heart tried to give him again, the weeks after James left were filled with a deafening silence for Emily. She had destroyed the life they had built together, and the realization of her choices weighed heavily on her. She reached out to James repeatedly, sending long messages, leaving voicemails, and even showing up at places she thought he might be. But James was resolute. His absence was his answer. Mark, too, disappeared, but not without consequence. Word of the betrayal spread through their mutual friends, leaving him ostracized and riddled with regret. What he and Emily had done wasn't just a mistake. It was a calculated decision born out of selfishness and misplaced desires. He thought of apologizing to James, but knew it wouldn't undo the damage. For James, life after betrayal was a slow journey of self-discovery. He threw himself into his work, picking up projects he had once set aside. He started therapy to unpack the layers of hurt and loss. His therapist encouraged him to explore new hobbies, and soon he found solace in running, something he had always wanted to try. The rhythmic pounding of his feet on the pavement became a form of meditation, a way to outrun the shadows of his past. Over time, James began to open up to new people. He met a group of runners at the park, and one of them, a woman named Claire, stood out. Claire was kind and understanding, with a quiet strength that James found comforting. She didn't pry into his past, and he didn't offer details. Instead, they bonded over shared interests and a mutual appreciation for the present moment. Emily, meanwhile, was left to pick up the pieces of her own life. She tried to make amends with herself, realizing that her actions stemmed from a deep unhappiness she had never addressed. She sought therapy, too, hoping to understand what led her to betray the man who had once been her everything. Through the sessions, she uncovered long-buried feelings of inadequacy and restlessness. It was painful, but it was necessary. As the years passed, James and Emily's lives diverged entirely. James and Claire grew close, and while James still carried scars, he learned to trust again. Emily, on the other hand, chose to remain single, focusing on rebuilding herself and finding meaning beyond relationships. One day, years later, James and Emily ran into each other at a mutual friend's event. The encounter was awkward but civil. They exchanged polite smiles and brief pleasantries. For James, it was a moment of closure, proof that he had moved on and reclaimed his happiness. For Emily, it was a bittersweet reminder of what she had lost and a testament to the cost of her choices. Though their paths would never intertwine again, both carried the lessons of their shared history. For James, it was a lesson in resilience and the importance of valuing oneself. For Emily, it was a hard-earned reminder that love requires honesty and self-awareness. In the end, life moved forward, proving that even in the wake of betrayal, there can be growth and renewal years later. James had built a new life with Claire, who became his anchor in a way he never thought possible. Together, they created a home filled with trust and mutual respect. The scars of betrayal were still there, but they no longer defined him. Emily, now living a quieter life, found peace in her solitude. She had learned to confront her flaws and accept the consequences of her actions. While regret lingered, it became a catalyst for personal growth. Their paths rarely crossed, but when they did, it was with polite nods and a shared understanding that some chapters are meant to close forever. Both had moved on, carrying the lessons of the past into their separate futures. Over time, James married Claire, embracing a love built on trust and understanding. His life flourished, filled with happiness and purpose. Emily focused on her own healing, learning to forgive herself while living a quieter, introspective life. Though she often thought of James, she knew their story had ended for good. When their paths crossed briefly at a friend's wedding, a simple nod was exchanged, an unspoken acknowledgement of the past and the lives they had built apart. Both had moved forward, forever changed but stronger for it. As James and Claire started their family, their joy became a testament to his resilience. He cherished every moment, grateful for a second chance at love and the peace he had found. Claire's unwavering support helped him finally let go of the bitterness that had once consumed him. Emily, too, found her own form of redemption. She pursued her passion for art, channeling her emotions into her paintings, which began to gain recognition. Though she remained single, her life was rich with self-discovery and meaningful friendships. Years later, at another mutual friends event, James and Emily exchanged a few words for the first time since their separation. Their conversation was brief but sincere. James told her he hoped she was doing well, and Emily, with a faint smile, wished him the same. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was closure, a quiet acknowledgement that they had both grown from their shared pain. As they parted ways, James looked at Claire, his heart full of gratitude. Emily walked away, determined to continue creating a life she could be proud of. Their story had ended long ago, but the lessons it left behind shaped the people they had become, reminding them both that even after heartbreak, life could still be beautiful. After that brief encounter, James and Emily never crossed paths again. Their lives continued to unfold in vastly different directions. James, now a father of two, poured his energy into his family and his growing business. Claire stood by his side as they navigated the challenges and joys of life together. Every milestone reminded him how far he had come and how deeply he valued the stability and love he had rebuilt. Emily's art career blossomed, her pieces gaining popularity for their raw emotion and depth. Through her work, she found a way to process her past and transform her pain into something meaningful. She began teaching art classes, helping others channel their emotions into creativity, which brought her a sense of fulfillment she hadn't expected. Though they no longer thought of each other often, both carried the impact of their shared history. For James, it was a reminder of his strength and the importance of setting boundaries. For Emily, it was a painful but necessary turning point that pushed her to confront her flaws and grow. In the end, their lives were a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. While the scars of betrayal never fully faded, both James and Emily found happiness in their own ways, proving that even after the deepest hurt, it's possible to heal and thrive. Years turned into decades, and the memories of their shared past softened, becoming less a source of pain and more a distant echo of another life. James grew older surrounded by love and laughter, his children now adults carving their own paths. Claire remained his rock, and together, they enjoyed the simple pleasures of life. Family dinners, quiet vacations, and the joy of watching their grandchildren grow. Emily, now a renowned artist, had her own version of a fulfilled life. Her art became a legacy, her name synonymous with pieces that evoke deep emotions. She found contentment in her solitude, spending her days painting in her studio, mentoring young artists, and reflecting on how far she had come. While she occasionally thought of James, it was without bitterness or longing, just a quiet acknowledgement of the role he played in shaping who she had become. One day, while at a gallery opening for one of her students, Emily noticed a familiar face across the room. It was James, older now, but still carrying the warmth she remembered. He was holding Claire's hand, both of them admiring a painting together. Their eyes met briefly, and James gave her a small, polite nod. Emily returned the gesture with a faint smile before turning away, leaving the moment as it was, simple and unspoken. That fleeting encounter marked the last time they saw each other. It was a quiet conclusion to a story that had once been filled with pain, but ultimately led to growth and renewal. Both James and Emily lived the rest of their lives in peace, their journeys proving that even broken relationships can lead to beautiful endings, just not always together. As the years passed, James and Emily remained memories in each other's lives, threads of a story that had shaped their paths but no longer defined them. James and Claire celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary, surrounded by family and friends. His children often marveled at the quiet wisdom their father carried, unaware of the trials that had forged it. James found joy in mentoring his grandchildren, teaching them about resilience and the importance of living with integrity. Emily continued her work as an artist and mentor, her name becoming synonymous with emotional depth in the art world. One day, she was invited to speak at a prestigious event about the transformative power of art. Standing in front of the audience, she shared her journey, not the details of her mistakes, but the lessons of redemption, growth, and the beauty of rebuilding one's life. Her honesty moved the crowd, and for the first time, she felt at peace with her past. In his twilight years, James often sat on the porch of his home, reflecting on his life. He felt no anger or resentment, only gratitude for the journey that had brought him to the present. When asked about the most important lesson he had learned, he would say, "Life doesn't always go as planned, but it always gives you a chance to start over." Emily, too, found solace in her later years, surrounded by students and friends who admired her strength and creativity. Though she lived alone, she was never lonely, her days filled with purpose and quiet fulfillment. When they both passed on, years apart, their lives were celebrated in different ways. James was remembered as a loving husband, father, and mentor whose strength inspired those around him. Emily's legacy was her art, a testament to the beauty that can rise from pain. Though their stories had diverged long ago, they remained proof that even after heartbreak and betrayal, life could rebuild itself into something beautiful and meaningful. In the end, both had found peace, and that was enough.